I'm the program manager for Sustainable Food Places. This is our prospective members drop-in session, just to check everybody knows they're in the place that they want to be in. So if you are thinking about or about to become or about to apply for membership of Sustainable Food Places, then you are in the right place. You've probably already seen a whole bunch of resources that we've got on our website to support that. But this session gives you a chance to hear from us and ask a few questions and bring some of the documents to life. I'm just going to say hello to our colleagues. So yeah, I'm Leon. Sharma, do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Sharma. I'm Network Officer for SFP.
Callum?
Hello, everybody. I'm Callum. I'm the Impact and Evaluation Lead for the program.
Bill?
Hi, I'm Pearl. I'm Sustainable Food Places Manager and I look after the programme in Wales with Food Sense Wales.
Thank you. It's great to have a number of team members on this call. There is more of us. I think there's 12 of us now, 12 or 13 across all our partner organisations for the SFP team. So there's a few of us, all with different responsibilities and skill sets. So yeah, it's good to know. You can look on our website again, see who we are, who you might want to contact about very specific things that you're interested in or are concerning you. So it'd be good to go around. I think we've got enough time and there's not too many of us to go around and hear from you that have joined the call. And it's really important, I think, to say up front that our network, our movement, we really pride ourselves in our peer-to-peer connections and the power of that, which is the SFP program facilitates, but it also goes on just between members as well. So I think it's quite important that you all feel comfortable asking each other questions and learning from each other. I think that's one of our biggest offers actually, is that networking. So if you don't mind, I'll call on you and maybe just say who you are, where you are in the country, and maybe if you're thinking about applying this round of membership, that'd be good to know as well. So I'll just go from the top of my screen. Debbie?
Yeah, hi. I'm Debbie. I'm the Ada and Worthing Food Partnership in West Sussex. I am the chair of the steering group, and I'm also now a director of the KIC. We formed a KIC for the food partnership as well. We've got 5 directors. So we've got nearly 200 members. And our steering group comprises of about 35 people, including many of which are stakeholders, farmers, restaurateurs, the councillors, general public community groups, etc. So that's us.
Thank you, Debbie. Welcome. Anne?
Hi, my name's Anne Owen. I'm the Local Food Partnership Coordinator for Ceredigion. Our partnership is called Partnerheid Boyd Ceredigion. Yeah, we're hoping to apply this round. And we're not that, well, we're nearly 2 years in existence now, but I feel like a lot of work has already happened, not specifically by the steering group, but very much by our projects that we have managed to support with funding. So slightly different structure, I would say. We don't have a wide membership as such. We've got a very well-functioning steering group, but the wider membership hasn't been established yet. We're hoping to get that going with the website, which should go live in the next couple of weeks. And then there will be a button for people to press where they can sign up to our food charter and become a member and receive our newsletters.
Thank you, Anne. Sue? You're on mute. Sue.
Yes, I do.
You're
Hello, I'm from Wakefield, in West Yorkshire. I think we're closer to Anne's group than Debbie's group in Worthing with regards to our setup. We launched in the autumn of last year, and we have a core group that meets regularly. And we are having our first webinar at the beginning of next month to try encourage the people who signed up in the autumn, and maybe prospective members. We're very much hoping that we will be able to join your organisation, but whether we'll get it done in time for this round or not, I'm not sure. I'm very much a new girl, but I was the only person who could attend today, so I'm taking notes very quickly and hoping that I will be able to share the information with the other people in the core group. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Sue. Yeah, I'm in Sheffield, Sue. So you're just up the road from me.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Geographically, yeah. And there's a nice little Yorkshire sort of cohort that keep in touch with each other. So maybe
Yeah.
I'll get in touch with you separately about that because they're very supportive.
That would be wonderful because
Yeah.
we have got information from your group as a sort of, we would like to be like this.
Okay, so I want to give a bit of background to the program and where we're at right now. So SFP, Sustainable Food Places, we'll say SFP all the time. It's what most people say, by the way. SFP, we're now into our fourth phase of work. We call it phase four, and we've got some funding to do that. It started December last year, and that phase of work will finish in 3 years. So in November 2027. And we're continuing our main work, which is supporting food partnerships. But what we're doing over the next 3 years is focusing on three areas of work that we think are important. So the first one is around sustainability. So not the ecological sustainability, but the sustainability of the program itself. And to do that, what we're looking at is to what extent and what conditions would be useful for our members, to have more control, more say, more governance, and also maybe even take on some delivery of the program itself. So that's the first area of focus that we've got. The second one is around diversity, inclusion, and equity. So basically ensuring that, well, us, the program, our members, the steering groups, and so on, but also the communities are representative, and there is a diversity that reflects the communities that they're working in. So that's the second area of work that we're focusing on. And the third one, which is closely connected to the second one, is community voices for change. Is the work that we're doing, is the work that our members are doing locally, is that what is wanted locally? Is that what their community want? And it's always maybe not one community, because we have communities of interest and there's loads of different communities in areas as well. So that's our third area of work. There is a sort of fourth one that isn't named as such, that Callum leads, which is around impact and evaluation. So how do we measure the impact of what we're doing? How do we measure the impact of what you're doing in your food partnerships? So that's phase four, which we're in now. We currently have 114 members. All those members met the criteria, the membership criteria that you can see. Well, we'll go through them actually, but you'll see in the documents on the website. Not everyone who applies for membership gets it. Application is no guarantee of getting membership. And I think it's one of our unique strengths. It can also be a bit like, oh, that's a bit hard, or we're not sure about doing that. But I think it is definitely a strength of the network that we apply rigor to the membership process. I think this makes the network strong, resilient, responsive. It may, some people feel a little prohibitive, but the intention is to apply our learning as to what makes for an impactful food partnership and have some criteria at the start of that journey for membership. We also want to say membership, remember, as well, is for your place. We say this about our awards as well, because we've got an award scheme. So membership of SFP, if it was your group, Sue, it would be Wakefield, our members of SFP. You might call yourself Wakefield, you might have a name, but it's not for an individual, it's not for an organisation, it's not for the council or the host organisation or the steering group. The membership is for the whole place, because we are place-based. Next slide, please. There's going to be a little bit of repetition from different angles in this presentation. We've kept the whole thing quite short, so you will have loads of time for questions, but you will hear these things It's because they're important, and it's what we're looking for in an application and in a partnership. The first is about being cross-sector, so about collaboration. What additionality, what extra good work can happen when you put different stakeholders in a room who wouldn't normally come together? How do those good things happen? Something that's quite hard to measure, but we know it's really, really important. And the reason for that is quite simple. If you try and change the food system, you need a systems approach, and no one person or organisation can cover all of that system. So you'll hear us talk about this a lot, the cross-sector element. The second one is about developing a vision for your place. So we're place-based. You need to decide what your place needs in terms of a good food system. Because if you want to get to where you're going, you need to know where you're going. So a vision and endpoint in mind is really useful. What's the aim? What's the vision? And thirdly, working together, so this is collaborative working across the whole food system. This is the bit that can sound quite daunting. And hopefully today's session will make it a little easier. We don't expect all new members or prospective members to be working at, on all elements of the food system equally at all times. It's almost impossible. There's some particularly tough ones that always come up. Procurement's one of them. It's a tough nut to crack. But we don't want to see single issue partnerships, whether it's health or food poverty. And we also want to see an ambition to look forward to working on some of the parts of the food system that you're finding a bit difficult at the moment. So that can be quite daunting to some people, but we want to see the ambition and the plan, which is why we asked for a plan. We'll talk about that later, about what you're going to do in areas that at the moment might not be a priority or are too difficult to crack. So, oh yes, sorry, I just mentioned this, who we are. So we're a partnership as well. So we know about partnerships. We've got 6 partners in our partnership. I work for the Soil Association, who you will probably know mostly from either farming or organic certification or maybe Food for Life. There's Food Matters, Callum's with Food Matters, who are a food advocacy organisation in Brighton, and Sustain, who are quite well-known food campaigning organisation based in London. We also have a partner, sorry, in each of the nations, because the landscape, the sort of food landscape, the policy landscape, the actual landscape is different in each of those places. So we have a national partner who can deliver sort of more bespoke support and services to our members there. So that's the partnership. I am going to pass over to Callum, who's going to take on the next few slides.
Thanks, Leon. Yeah, we just wanted to be able to give a little bit more context and background to the way that we think about a food partnership, as a part, at least in the way we do it in the Sustainable Food Places programme. Acknowledging that there are many different types of food partnerships, but this is the approach that we take, as Leon mentioned already, this real emphasis on whole systems, cross-sector working. Aware in the room, as you introduced yourself, that there's already a lot of expertise in partnership working. It seems like you're all on your journey already, on the partnership journey. So sorry if this is stuff that you know well already, but sometimes we're joined by people that are sort of earlier on in the process. So yeah, as Leon mentioned, part of my role is to think about our impact as a network and how we measure and communicate that. And what that's allowed me to have is a really quite, well, it's been a joy really to see just the incredible impact that food partnerships are having across the UK, across all sorts of food system issues that we face. And I know that many of you and all your partners are already, no doubt, working tirelessly to support health and well-being of the communities that you serve. Whether that's through perhaps public health initiatives or supporting food banks, shaping local policy, whatever it might be. But we all know that the challenges that we face in food are much bigger than what we can do as a single organisation. And all these challenges are intimately interconnected within this system. So if we're going to tackle food poverty, if we're going to address climate change, if we're going to tackle public health crisis, we know that we need to move away from a siloed approach towards working across organizational, sectoral, and geographic boundaries. Otherwise, our work just remains in silos. Otherwise, we're no doubt doing great work, but we're missing opportunities either to find relationships and synergies with other people, but also to try and make sure that we're not unintentionally undermining the work of others. And that's where our food partnership comes in. As Leon said, it's about bringing stakeholders together fundamentally in your place, in wherever it is that you are, whether it's a county, a city, a town. It's about bringing people together from that food system, so community members, but also, of course, local authority, charities working in the area, local businesses, to come together and develop that shared vision, that idea about what we want to see in the future for our place, our agenda for change to address some of those challenges that we face. And that's where kind of all food partnerships tend to start, is that vision setting, getting everyone together to come up with that, get everyone on the same hymn sheet, if you like, to think about how they want to see change develop. And then crucially, and where our food partnerships perhaps differ from others in the UK and perhaps elsewhere in the world as well, food partnerships continue to play a really critical role in coordinating the collective action, the action of us and our stakeholders, to bring that vision to reality, to be able to coordinate that collaborative action, to see some of those changes in a food system. Next slide, please, Sharma. So how do food partnerships do that then? Well, that's a difficult question at times to answer. There's 114 is where we're up to now, all working across the UK, all working in their very unique contexts. And so when we talk about the Sustainable Food Places approach, we're not trying to preach a specific model to you of how a food partnership has to be. Our approach is actually that a food partnership has to be a reflection of you, your local context. Who's important, who are the key stakeholders in your local context, what are the key issues that make sense for you to work on. So all food partnerships are a little bit different, really, across the towns and cities and counties of the UK. That being said, we can point to certain things that all food partnerships tend to do. And we've got them actually listed down the left-hand side there: deliver, coordinate, influence, instigate, and amplify. And I'll real quickly run through what we mean by those. So the deliver one is a sort of a bit more of the what you'd expect from an organization. It's the actual delivery of projects and programs, so being proactively involved in delivering things on the ground. Lots of food partnerships do that. So that's lots of food partnerships take a role in delivering things, but it's not necessary always, and it certainly isn't the primary function of a food partnership to deliver projects and programs. More accurately, the primary function is to coordinate action. So that means about bringing stakeholders together, of course, as we talked about a lot already. It's about facilitating knowledge sharing. It's about connecting dots across the food system, which leads to the instigation of work, as we've got there on the fourth point. When we do that sharing of knowledge, of bringing people together, what we see across the network is some really amazing, innovative approaches that emerge because there's been a food partnerships that's brought the two ropes together and allowed something new to emerge. Food partnerships also do a lot of influencing work. So that can be influencing decision-making. Many of our food partnerships across the country are proactively involved, in fact, often being turned to by local authorities to help develop strategy for the city, help to develop policy for the city, and increasingly are valued for their ability to be able to create a much more inclusive and balanced approach to policy making because of the way we're able to bring in different knowledges from across the food system. We also do a lot of influencing hearts and minds of people, and lots of food partnerships are involved in campaigning work, communications work, to try and engage local communities, local people in that process of both sort of governing the food systems, strategy and policy, but also in being proactively involved in all sorts of other aspects of food culture and celebrating our local food culture. And then food partnerships do a lot of amplifying. Great to hear that you're getting a website going. I forget now. I think it was Anne. You mentioned that. That is another key role that food partnerships play. We've become quite a platform for celebrating work, and being that sort of center of the cog with all these amazing partners that are doing amazing things. Where we have an opportunity in our communications channels just to bring that together and make this really compelling narrative about what local work is happening. And why it should be valued and funded and supported. We call that the sort of backbone function And that's how we like to think about food partnerships, is, as I say, not necessarily always delivering, but we're in the middle. It's like a sort of spoken wheel hub here, where we're sat in the middle with all these different actors that are doing amazing work. We're just helping to create that sort of means of communication across these partners, and also amplifying and celebrating our work, and harnessing our sort of collective power to change things and influence things. So just to give some real quick examples to that then, there's so many. In fact, if you go to the Sustainable Food Places website, we have this database where there's loads of great examples. But just to give some context to that then, so Cardiff, for example, Pearl's joining us today. Cardiff Food Partnership had an influencing role on the council's climate change strategy, the One Planet Cardiff strategy. And as the role that they played as a partnership was to ensure that food became a central pillar to the way that they were thinking about climate change within the city. In Oxford, the Food Partnership directly coordinates the community food network. So in their context, they didn't have a sort of community food poverty network, so they helped establish that, and are now helped to facilitate a network of food banks, larders, fridges, distributing food to over 4,000 people in the city. You might already have a sort of community food network or food poverty network in your place. So it might not make sense for you for a food partnership to do that if you already have, but it would make sense to bring them into the conversation. So they're a part of course, of that. Something completely different, Shropshire set up the Shropshire Good Food Trail, which is an annual event where they celebrate local food culture. So for tourists and locals alike to be able to just be signposts and explore some of the great local food producers in Shropshire. So supporting the local food economy there. Next slide, please, Sharma. So bit of what a food partnership is and what a food partnership isn't then. Inevitably spend quite a lot of time talking at these kind of events, and almost always what comes up, and Debbie, of course, has heard me say all of this before, just one of these such events, but food partnerships, they're not just a talking shop. And that's often the first thing that people say, or the criticism is, oh, we're already involved in so many of these partnerships or forums or whatever it might be. Isn't this just another talking shop? And certainly from our experience, the vast majority of our food partnerships are so much more than just a talking shop. And the reason for that is that they move from talking to strategic action. It is about getting to a strategy. It is about getting to a plan, and it is about getting to an action plan to deliver on that strategy. That being said, it is the onus of the stakeholders and the partnership to get it to be more than a talking shop. That is a risk. These things can get stuck as sort of a bottleneck as just being a talking shop. So part of our role as a food partnership is to really drive forward to that proper co-development, proper collaborative, strategic level work. It's also not about centralizing control or authority. And when you do stakeholder engagement, this sometimes raises a bit of a fear that, well, we're already doing great work. Why is the food partnership going to be replicating our work, taking over our work? It's not about that at all. It is about finding ways to support their work. So whatever it is that they're doing, our role as a food partnership is just to be able to say, okay, you're doing that. This person's also doing some great work. If you communicate, is there an opportunity for some kind of added value for both of you in that circumstance? So what it is then, well, it is about finding opportunities for communication and, of course, collaboration, and to find ways of supporting and adding to the work of your partners, and ultimately co-developing and co-delivering a food strategy and action plan for your place. Loads of great resources on our website. If you go onto the toolkit, this is all of these points are explored in much more depth, and we go through governance models and ways that you can think about that, the processes of building your steering group. So do have a look at our toolkits, because there's some great resources there. Thanks. I'll go ahead now and pass over to Pearl.
Me, actually.
Sorry, Sharma.
Yeah,
Beg your
that's all
pardon.
right.
Passing over to Sharma.
So yeah, primarily SFP is a movement and a network. So the network covers all 4 nations in the UK. As we've said, at the moment we've got 114 members. This is a little illustration of our most recent conference. There's a lot of our members there in Birmingham. And that represents around almost 30% of local authorities in the UK that we cover now as the network. And this just keeps on growing. And there's so much value in being part of that network. One of the biggest values is the peer-to-peer support and knowledge sharing that happens, and that happens through a few different avenues within the network. So we have our email forum, which some of you might already join, the Rise Up list. We have peer-to-peer like sharing events. We have member-led webinars, have in-person events, and we're hoping to set up a new online platform soon on Circle where people can continue that peer-to-peer learning and sharing as well. Being part of the network is being part of a bigger movement, a national movement, and that also means being able to contribute to national policy, to influence on a larger scale beyond the local as well, being able to contribute to national campaigns. So we've had several over the past 3 phases, most recent being Food for the Planet. The programme offers the network. We offer training events, we offer networking events, we offer resources, which you'll have seen on the website. We run a bi-monthly coordinator catch-up. So that's another space for people to share their experiences, challenges. A tested framework for action. So obviously our 6 key issues, this has been developed over time, and the toolkit that goes alongside that, this has been developed through people's experiences, and that's constantly being updated to reflect all the expertise in the network. And then we have the SFP awards scheme. So there's the bronze, silver and gold awards, which you may be aware of. So in order to join the SFP network, we do ask people to apply for membership. And as Leon said, there is a degree of rigor involved in that, and it can seem maybe a bit onerous, but also I think there's a lot of value in that because it demonstrates that it's a really robust network, and the reason for the membership criteria are they're all based on experience of what makes a kind of sustainable and resilient food partnership. So the requirements for membership are a named lead person for the food partnership, clear terms of reference. So we ask this in a document including the name of the food partnership, an outline of the vision, which could just be a bullet pointed list or a summary paragraph, details of agreed governance arrangements, so things like chairs, steering groups, working groups, whatever you've decided, a list of members and stakeholders, and we do want that to include representatives from different sectors, so from the public and third sectors and from the private sector if possible, or at least showing some intention to engage with the private sector if that's not, so it hasn't come back yet. Evidence of regular meetings for at least 6 months, so meeting minutes. And then the 2 bits that sometimes feel a bit scary for people, a food partnership work plan covering the next 6 months, and a food system overview. So yeah, these can seem a little bit daunting initially, but there is more guidance in our membership documents about what that needs to contain, and they don't need to be really onerous tasks to do. It's just to show that there has been that thought and that intention behind these things. This document in the corner of the slide is just a bit of an illustration of a food systems overview from Plymouth, that they've done something very visual, very straightforward, but demonstrates some of the ways that they start to look into what the food system looks like in their area. And now Pearl will go into a bit more depth about some of those requirements.
Thanks, Sharma. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more now about the keys to success and what a systems approach looks like, following on from some of the things that others have mentioned earlier. So we have the evidence of work, those keys to success being really three areas. So having that shared vision across the food partnership. So for those of you who have steering groups rather than say a wider membership, is having that shared vision across the steering group, and that's a really fundamental part that you can then use to then communicate when you're building a wider network as well. The next thing is the systems approach, which I'm going to come on to in a moment. And the final thing is that inclusive working with stakeholders across the system. And again, I'll come on to that in a minute in terms of who should be involved in a food partnership and what we might expect to see in a membership application. And to follow on what Sharma was saying as well in terms of the benefits of the membership, when I'm speaking to policymakers, and I'm sure when the rest of the team are as well, one of the things that I'm emphasising all the time is that even to be a food partnership, a member of Sustainable Food Places, it requires this level of work. So I'm really emphasising to policymakers that members of Sustainable Food Places are showing that initial level of work already. So I think we've found that in Wales really helpful to kind of have that robust process to be able to demonstrate what is happening in local food partnerships. Oh, next slide, please. So I hope you're all familiar a little bit with the Sustainable Food Places framework and how we've created 6 key issues to work around. So as others have said earlier, absolutely a place-based approach. What works in one area might look very different to what's working and what's happening in another area. But what people have fed back to us is that it feels really useful to have the overall kind of framing of what a food systems approach is and areas that places can look at. And within those, they're hopefully broad enough that they can be then adapted for every place in terms of local priorities. But those 6 key issues are food governance and strategy. So this is about having that steering group, that collaboration and creating that strategic vision. There's the good food movement, which is all about engaging citizens and residents and people into a local good food movement. Then we've got healthy food for all, which brings together both the health and nutrition and ensuring good healthy food for everyone, and the sort of tackling food poverty and reducing those barriers to accessing good food. We've then got the sustainable food economy. So that's looking at all the different parts of business, also social enterprises in that food economy. So that's retailers, markets, farmers, producers, processors, intermediaries, and then catering and procurement, which is similar but focuses then on that, what's being served in anchor institutions and public organisations and where that food is being sourced from. And then finally, there's food for the planet. So making sure that food in an area is good for climate and nature and reducing food waste as well. Obviously, that sounds like an awful lot to do. And as others have said earlier, absolutely wouldn't expect one person or one food partnership coordinator to be able to deliver across all of those areas, which is why we see the importance of having the food partnership, so different members and different partners of a partnership being able to deliver across different issues and take that full system approach. And that's what we want to see, that even if you're at a stage where you're not necessarily you're not excellent in every single area, because it takes time to develop those things. I think as part of the membership, we want to see that commitment towards a systems approach rather than looking at, say, one single issue. So it might be that there's a food partnership that started off as a food poverty network, for example. I think that's quite common. But we would, in terms of applying for Sustainable Food Places membership, we'd expect that partnership to be going beyond just one issue around food poverty, or if it was a climate change group that started off with, we'd expect them to be going beyond just climate. So the idea is that it's taking that full systems approach. Don't know if anyone else wants to jump in from the team there. I don't know.
No, other than, it's all one system the way we see it, but one way of thinking about it is that each of those key issues there on that slide can have a negative or a positive impact on the others. So if you only focus on one area, you could end up pushing the problem around, whatever that problem is. So it's just about seeing it as a system. This is the way that we have broken down the food system. We know there are many others. You can see one of them on the right as well.
Yeah, and many food partnerships will have their own vision and own goals that are, it's not necessarily that they'll be the same as these 6 key issues. They might have, I know when I was coordinating Cardiff, we had 5 good food goals, which did relate to these, but had their own separate language and wording. But yeah, it's showing that full systems approach. And I thought that was a good point, Leon. And for example, an area could be working really hard on their sustainable food or on their food economy, but all that food being unhealthy food, which would then have a negative impact on another area. So it's trying to make sure that you're not compromising one area for another. But I know that's also sometimes easier said than done. Next slide, please. And this is a bit of an example of how food partnerships can work. Again, might look very different, but often you'll have a food partnership coordinator in the center of this circle, and then they're supported by a steering group or a strategy board or some other sort of smaller group, which it sounds like the group here are all talking. Sounds like people have, which brings together those different cross-sector organizations, and then often there's a wider network around that smaller strategy group or steering group, which then brings in other food networks, other types of organizations, citizens, individuals, and the idea is that then spreads out and creates a wide good food movement across your area. I think that was all my slides, but just to say, to conclude my section really is this is what we're looking for, or this is what we're hoping food partnerships will be aiming towards. We know that at the stage of applying for membership, food partnerships might not be all the way there yet with everything because it takes time to develop those relationships and develop those structures. But I think having this in mind as the direction of travel is really useful for your applications.
Thank you, Pearl. That's great. There's a lot to take on there, I know. But at the beginning, I did say, we were talking about being food systems based and being cross-sector. We've kind of repeated that through because I think that is the core. And what we're looking for is active food partnerships that are, working towards those aims. So questions. You can ask about anything you want to do with membership. So put it in the chat or use the hands up feature and we'll maybe take it in turns to answer any questions or just clarifications, maybe.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question on the food mapping.
Yes.
And just because that's the one area that I'm finding the most difficult. I mean, I've gone through and looked at because we've got a 2-tier authority. We've got West Sussex,
Yeah.
and then we've got Worthing Borough Council, and then we've got Ada District Council. So there's lots of different. So going through all of that and trying to work all that out, how advanced does that need to be for the application? Are you expecting, like a lot of information?
Yeah, it's a good question because it can seem quite daunting. I'll pass to the others as well because I think there'll be different views. But from my point of view, you're just looking at a snapshot of where you are with the resources that you've got for mapping. And actually, don't try and do it all yourself, is what I'd say. One of the best ways to even just have a bit of a beginning of a good food movement and bringing people together is that mapping exercise. People love maps. So if you have a meeting, we sometimes call them food summits, but you can call them what you want. If you bring people together who are interested in this work and you've got a big map of your area, and say, tell us about your projects, put them on and then go off and have a cup of tea and talk to someone else. And, that exercise can be a collaborative one. The idea of one person sitting down trying to map the food system in their area would be close to impossible. Callum does a bit of this work as well, so I don't know what you think about that. So,
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said there, Leon. Debbie, I wouldn't worry about feeling like you're having to map reality, if you know what I mean. It's not like you're having to, define the food system completely within Ada and Worthing. It is more for us to see that you've gone through a process of trying to understand the food system in your local area and having a key idea of who some of those key people across the system
Yeah.
are. So if you've done that, then that will be sufficient. If you're able to evidence that you've looked at, you've done some research, you've done some engagement across the system, that will be sufficient for the membership application.
Because Transition Town Worthing have mapped the whole area for Worthing and outside Worthing in terms of food, but also farming, everything. So we rely on that really. So
sounds like you've done it.
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
But also food policy mapping, so our policy as well is about West Sussex and also Worthing Borough Council. And I've looked at all the work, West Sussex and also Worthing Borough Council. There isn't much policy in relation to food. In fact, there's no policy in relation to food in Worthing. Sussex has got a bit on food waste, but other than that, there's not very much at all. And a lot of other sectors like the health and well-being, there's more on food in that section. So I just brought all that together really in terms of policy generally, but we're about to go into devolution as well, so everything's going to change.
Pill, you've done a fair bit of this, so I don't know if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to come in and also say that mapping also means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And for some people, a physical or some areas, a kind of physical geographical map is very useful. But correct me if I'm wrong, team, we are not only looking at like geographical maps, it could be presented in a different way in terms of the list of people that you know or people and projects you know are involved. So possibly for people on this call, but others watching the recording to think about what type of mapping works well for your area and don't feel that just because you haven't got a physical kind of digital map of some kind means it doesn't.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Pearl. You might even use our 6 key issues or your own way of doing it. You might say, well, what is happening in our area around procurement or what is happening around a good food movement? And then it's a bit of a gap analysis as well. And you can think, well, actually, there's loads happening there, but this area is not so good. And that maybe might be the focus for our first year or two of work. So, yes, good point, Pearl.
And I guess oh, sorry.
Sorry,
I'll
Sean.
you in a second, Sharma. I was just going to say an example of maybe where it would be limited or where it wouldn't be sufficient might be if a food partnership applied for membership and said, we know the 4 teams in the council that are working on food, but haven't looked at anything beyond that, for example, might be an example of like what not to do. But it sounds, Debbie, from what you were saying, you've got a really thorough, sounds like you're nailing it.
Sean?
Yeah, all I was going to add is that we're not trying to kind of generate unnecessary work for you as partnerships. So like this should be useful to you. So do it in a way that's useful for you. And yeah, we're not trying to create extra work that's not going to be kind of use to the partnership in the future. It should be something that can be drawn on to guide your work.
I mean, I found it quite a useful exercise because I didn't realise how little reference is made to food in the whole of West Sussex. It's quite shocking compared to East Sussex, and it's made me go down the path of having meetings with some officers in Brighton to find out how they managed to incorporate, how the food partnership works with Brighton Council and how they managed to get the council on board, because our council is completely uninterested in food. So it's made me look at the strategic approach to food and food policy in our area. Although they give the nod to the councillors and say, yeah, this is really interesting. They're not actually they actually haven't got a food plan or any strategy in relation to food for the area. So it's trying to find, it's trying to work with the council to develop that.
Yeah. And for almost everything we've covered today, we've got some excellent guides and case studies. It does take a bit of digging on the website because we've got a lot of support out there, but there is a guide to There's one in the toolkit around mapping, I think, Callum. I think I'm right in thinking. Yes, there is.
Yes, there is. Yep, yep.
Any other specific questions about what you might need to submit or process to do that, or anything at all, actually, about being a
I just
member?
got one more, which is when you apply, I've looked at the form, I filled the form out, get ready to send, and you attach all these documents, but it doesn't really give a history or an information, a flow of what we've been doing. Is it okay when you send the email to in the email, send all the information about the partnership and the
Yeah,
history of it?
absolutely. That's really useful. Yes.
Yeah, we're trying to streamline the process as much as possible. But yeah, that additional context would just be great for us to know and to be able to learn about you, really.
Can I come in next,
Of course.
please?
So go ahead.
Thanks. I've been given 4 questions by some of the people on the in the
We'll
group.
do one at a time.
Right, okay, yeah. How many work plan ideas should we put under each title, as we recognise that too many is sort of overwhelming? Is there an optimum number?
Well, the optimum number should be what you think you can deliver, I guess. So the work plan is not, it's not a strategy, so it's not a signed off strategy by council or by cabinet or whatever.
Yeah,
Is literally what is the plan for the partnership over the next 6 months or year. So what you're planning to do. So I would just base it on that. It'll be part the discussion that you have around that will be really, really useful in creating cohesion within the partnership and bringing everyone together and say, well, what are we actually going to do? Some of it might be research, some of it might be direct delivery, some of it might be setting up a space for procurement managers to come together, whatever it is you want to do in the first year. So, you want to make a difference and have a little bit of ambition, but do not overwhelm yourself, especially in the early stages. That's a real danger.
thanks.
So we're not looking for more doesn't mean better. Sometimes
No,
we've had work plans come in for membership and we've gone, are you really going to do this? That might be your 5-year
I think
ambition.
actually, I think you've
Yeah.
just answered most of the others as well, because they were all to do with, do they need to be smaller and achievable, or can they be bigger projects? So, I mean, I think you've just said that if we're looking for something to achieve in the first year, it
I,
could
I,
be
I don't know.
stages
Pearl,
towards
so
something.
Pearl's the only member of this. Well, we've all been involved in food partnership way, but you're the only coordinator. So, I mean, how do you balance that ambition versus reality sort of thing?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think from my experience of both doing it and seeing what other food partnerships do, is usually the first work plan tends to be over ambitious. And then people have a go and deliver that and then go, okay, actually this time round we need to streamline it a bit. So I think it's really actually quite dependent on people's individual working styles because some people need something ambitious in order to motivate and do it, and other people prefer smaller, more reasonable chunks. But I would say we're not again, team, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not like a grant application where we'll be then ranking places
yeah.
against each other. So you feel you've got to put loads in order to
Yeah.
achieve it. We're not going to be assessing like
Yeah,
that at all.
I should have said that really. The membership, it's not a competitive process. We can have as many or as few members as we think is, have made reached
Right,
the
because
bar.
I think that helps with the next one, which is if you're prioritizing work plan ideas, do you go with the most popular where the energy is, or the most achievable, or hopefully both? But
I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, this is a one for you. We don't come around and, Sharma doesn't turn up in a year's time and check you've done it all. This is for you to do. So my experience is you definitely want some low-hanging fruit. You might
yeah,
even want things that you're almost done. So it just creates, it's great for morale of the group and it keeps momentum going. But you want something that's a bit tougher to reach as well. So a mix of that. You do need to address community priorities, but sometimes that bigger systems view that view will bring out things that you think need to happen, collaboration between sectors, say, that might not be if someone's just working in health or somewhere else. So it's yeah, it's a mix. I don't know if everybody else has got a view on that.
I was just going to say another thing you can do is also recognize what you're not
Yeah.
writing down what you're not going to do in the first year can also be useful as
um,
well to have it there to say we
yeah,
know that these are things that need doing, but we also know we're not going to be able to achieve them in the first year. And that can then demonstrate that you're still taking that systems approach, but recognizing that not everything is possible all at once.
Yeah, we asked for 6 months, isn't it? Sorry, I just
Yeah.
read slides. 6 months, but if you want to go longer because it's quite nice to think, well, actually, we really want to do something on procurement. That just feels like too much at the moment, but we'll do it, in year 2 or after the first 6 months, and then it is a nice feeling being able to say we're not ignoring it, we're just not doing it right now.
But we're also realistic in that we are setting ourselves a challenge, and things grow, don't they? As more people become involved, things happen.
Coalition of the willing is what you want to start with, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks, Sid.
From our perspective, this is really just getting people through the door. I mean, as Leon says, we hold this to a certain amount of rigor, certainly with that sort of whole systems aspect. But we want you to join.
Yeah.
We want you to be a part of this community. We want you to be a part of this space, as long as you kind of embrace some of those principles. And then we have our SFP awards process, so bronze, silver, and gold. And once we start going into bronze and silver and gold, that's when we start to have sort of higher expectations of seeing work across all 6 issues and seeing that added value. Right now, if you're coalescing a partnership that's trying to address whole system issues one way or another, then you're our kind of people, and we want you part of our community.
I'm hoping I can just quickly throw in a question here before we finish. I would say that about a third of the work I do is spent on networking, on just putting people together, getting, hearing, for instance, in the Poverty Network group that are looking for a facilitator to run a certain workshop. I know a third sector organisation who is doing that. I put them together. I would say a lot of that is emailing, phone calls, meetings. How do I represent that in the work plan? Because it is
That's
literally
good, isn't it? Because that is the work of the coordinator.
Yeah.
We did a whole strand of work. We still do it really, and we've got resources around making the case that Callum led on and Sharma did as well. So how do you make the case for that stuff? It's that backbone. How do you make the case? So that's why I'll pass to Callum. But what I would say is it's essential. There's got to be a way that you can say this stuff is actually really important.
Yeah.
And it is it is tricky, but it needs to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as Leon said, this is the role of a partnership, that doing what you're doing there, the connecting and convening, and often with the coordinators that I work with, they often don't think about that as a part of their impact. They think in sort of a very traditional way of, the deliverables on the ground, how many people we reached. That can be a part of that sort of composition of impact, but especially as a coordinator, that backbone function, you setting up emails or meetings, or that's really the added value of a food partnership. And there's another toolkit on the website that looks about how we can start to capture some of that information. And the best place to start, and it's good to start right now, is just every time that you do something like that, just make a note of it, put it in a database. Good. And then so over time, what we have there is really quite a coherent picture. And later on in your process, you're then able to engage in sort of evaluation methodology, things like process tracing. I don't know if you do much evaluation stuff, but ways of saying, okay, so we did this, what did it lead to? And obviously you need to start by saying, what do we do to begin with? And that's where just keep track of stuff. So if you're doing that, you're already, again, sort of way ahead of the curve and giving yourself the opportunity to.
And I wouldn't spend too long on trying to measure, you do need to measure, but I won't try and make that case before you do it. You just need to do it. I mean, a sort of class example I've seen is when people bring together different stakeholders at a food summit, bringing everyone together for the first time. And afterwards you ask them how it was. They say it's brilliant. I didn't know they were doing that. I'm now working with them, blah, 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 all this stuff. And at the end of it, and then sometimes people at the end go, well, do we really need a food partnership? Well, you've just made the case yourself for the food partnership. So I think the doing makes its own case in a way.
And just to say, I think exactly what you said can be part of your work plan. You can put it as, I will spend a third of my time as a coordinator doing exactly what you described. And you
use our language, use backbone function, making a case, coordination. We know what it means, but it might help build that case for when you're maybe looking around for funding or something like that.
I'll add my. I do a log, of what I do,
Oh,
every
brilliant.
week.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll add that to the application.
Yeah. Is it long?
No, it's
Oh,
concise.
no, I'm joking. I thought we did this exercise once with a whole bunch of coordinators where we did this, put a piece of paper on the wall and said everybody put up the different things they do as a coordinator. It was event organisation, it was this, it was that, it was strategy work, and the next minute it was running around looking for a caterer. And we basically said, well, if that was your job description, how many of you would go for that job? And they all said, no, we wouldn't go for that job, but we're already doing it. Okay, I think we're at the end. We're at 3 o'clock. I have got to go to another meeting, but yeah, please look at the resources if you can. Look on our website at members who are near where you are and get in touch. That I think the peer-to-peer support is one of the strongest things we do. They're the experts. They're the ones doing it. Would really welcome your applications and any other support. You can get in touch with us as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Join in.
Thanks.
Look forward to seeing your applications.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.